Obviously, your team would be a lot better if you would have stashed Rico Dowdle or guys like Rashad White on your bench ahead of the big waiver wire dash that has already happened with those players. Well, the good thing is there's still a lot of guys on the wire like that right now, and what we're trying to do is beat the waiver wire by grabbing some of these massive stash upside guys. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support, because I'm doing everything I can to help us all win a championship this year. So I'm going to get into the guys already that should be rostered. These guys should not be on the waiver wire at this point, but we all know that they are on the waiver wire, so I want to address these guys right out of the gate. So Trey Benson, to me, should not be on waivers. He's 52.1% rostered, and it's already getting lower by the week. And I get it why people have to do this move, right? If you have an IR spot, though, Trey Benson should be acquiring that IR spot, because the guy should be back in week 10, week 11, around that range, and he will immediately resume as the lead back in Arizona. And the guy has had plenty of upside, and he was really showing well before he ended up going down. If you go to fsroundup.com and look at the usage, even with James Conner, he was very involved. They want Trey Benson to be that lead back now that James Conner is gone. Trey Benson will absolutely take over the lead back role, and he was very efficient. Again, look at fsroundup.com and you'll see what the efficiency looked like for Trey Benson. I don't think he should be on waivers. I don't think Zach Charbonnet should be on waivers. And the only reason I bring this up is because I've gotten tons of questions about Zach Charbonnet and what we should do with him from a fantasy perspective, and if he's a droppable candidate. He's 67.1% rostered, and that number keeps going down because people are frustrated with Zach Charbonnet because he's clearly not the better running back than Kenneth Walker. But this is something I've said all season long when it comes to Charbonnet, which is that this guy particularly is in a split backfield, and he also gets the red zone work. This is one of the most valuable free tools that you can get on the site. When you go look at it any particular week, look at the RB usage pie charts on fsroundup.com, and you can see that Zach Charbonnet is consistently getting the goal line carries, which means that he has every week red zone upside. I think Zach Charbonnet is not only one of the better handcuffs in fantasy football, but is also a guy that has weekly upside. Woody Marks, I also consider a guy you should keep as well. Woody Marks is 55.3% rostered. I don't think he should be going anywhere. And listen, a lot of these guys who should be on rosters, they are already guys that, if you are in a 10-man league or lower than that, they should be on rosters. I think Woody Marks actually applies to that list. I get it, the disappointment of him not continuing the breakout campaign, but this is a guy with long-standing upside throughout the season. I would continue to stash him, as well as RJ Harvey. I do think RJ Harvey at 70.2% rostered. Most people agree with this, but there are people who are starting to drop him here and there because the workload is so insignificant and it's very inconsistent compared to the 1 week that he did really well against the Jets. RJ Harvey remains a high-round draft pick for the Broncos, an offense that has plenty of upside. I would continue to house RJ Harvey. And Tyler Algier at the running back position, I think needs to be on rosters as well. He's a very good handcuff back as well, 35% rostered in ESPN leagues, and this is also a guy that easily is involved on a weekly basis. You see it every single week. He takes a red zone carry away from Bijan Robinson, but Bijan's obviously so good that he ends up doing really well in fantasy, regardless of if Tyler Algier takes anything from him or not. Chris Godwin, Wan'Dale Robinson, Romeo Doubs, Trey Tucker, Rashid Shaheed, Kendrick Bourne, those are wide receivers you need to keep around because all of those guys absolutely can come back from injuries and whatever situation they have and provide you a weekly flex floor right there. I mean, with Godwin, obviously we know that the player is really good if he's fully healthy. I would not drop Godwin because he also has trade value. Wan'Dale Robinson needs to be played in a lot of situations on people's flex spots because he will be a very valuable piece for your team moving forward. Romeo Doubs always has touchdown upside. Trey Tucker, 57.8% rostered. That number needs to go way up. He's at this point their wide receiver one in the offense. Rashid Shaheed in New Orleans. This guy's a big play threat and actually has a very stable target share. And Kendrick Bourne, I think that the hamster wheel of injuries in San Francisco is going to continue because Juwan Jennings is playing through broken ribs. This is not a guy who's healthy, and I think Kendrick Bourne continues to play a role in this offense. And then the tight ends, I think Zach Ertz should be on rosters. Harold Fannin and Darren Waller, I think those are pretty obvious, but I have had people ask me about Ertz in particular, and I would say that Ertz is a guy you could actually start on a weekly basis. These guys should not be on waiver wires. Now let's get into the real meat right here. If you're in a 12-man league or beyond, 14, 16-team league, or if you have 8 bench spots or more, these are running backs I think you should be housing right now because they could break out. Tyjae Spears is the first guy, 28.6% rostered on ESPN. And I think that Tyjae Spears is on a bad team, and that's not going to change. But the thing that could easily change, and we're actually already starting to see it, is Tony Pollard's volume. Tony Pollard this whole season has been working off of volume. If you look at everything that he got without Tyjae Spears, he was getting 20-plus opportunities per game. That number has shrunk, and Tyjae Spears is eating into his workload, particularly in the passing game and also on the ground as well. So even though he's in a bad offense, he could take over this backfield. Brashard Smith in Kansas City, 3.1% roster. This is one of my favorite stashes right now because this guy actually could be the team's leading back at some point. Kansas City's offense is very good. We all know how well Patrick Mahomes is doing. The receivers are great. Now that they get Rashee Rice back, they're going to be even better. But the running game has been very, very bad. And I think there's a huge hole there for a running back to break through. And I think Brashard Smith looks the best to me to do that. Isaiah Pacheco, I'm not doubting that he'll continue to be involved. And same with Kareem Hunt, particularly at the goal line. But that pass catching work, we could be looking at a Jerick McKinnon 2022 style season from Brashard Smith when they finally start to unleash him more. And I want him on my roster when that happens. Bashul Tutin, I still view as a very valuable play as far as having a guy to stash. I think Bashul Tutin could easily start to gain more traction in Jacksonville. A couple of things have happened over the weeks. He has gotten less work, but Travis Etienne has actually been less efficient as well. Bashul Tutin at 28.6% roster, that has gone down over the weeks because of the lack of work. I still do believe that when you look at a coaching staff and a front office that didn't draft Travis Etienne, but they did draft Bashul Tutin, I think there's an opportunity that's still very open for Bashul Tutin to get more work in this offense. Kendre Miller is also a guy I think needs to be rostered right now because of a stash opportunity. I don't think that he's a must-play. And I've said this before, I do not think that Kendre Miller is the type of guy that you could play in any given week if Alvin Kamara is there. I think his ceiling is too low in the offense, but I will say this, at 23.2% rostered, he's widely available, and the guy is getting work with Alvin, and if they trade Alvin Kamara before the deadline, that could be a massive, kickstart my heart type of situation for Kendre Miller to be able to come in and do work. So I think Kendre Miller should be on rosters. Blake Corum, I think, should be as well. Look, the guy is not that great of a player. I don't think he is, but the case remains that he gets work with Kyron, and if Kyron goes down, he's clearly the lead guy. And Jaden Blue is the last guy I would say is rosterable, only because we don't know for certain if it's going to be Jaden Blue. If Javonte Williams twists an ankle or something, it could easily be one of their other running backs. Hunter Lepke comes to mind, but Jaden Blue is a guy that I do think should be rostered because I think he offers the most upside as far as explosive plays in that offense without Javonte Williams. And what our tool does is exactly that. If you go to fsroundup.com right now, you can utilize the automatic waiver wire tool because what happens all the time is there's a mad dash to the waiver wire after initial priority claims run to go get the remaining best free agents for free. What our system has done is automate that process so you can sleep through the night and still beat the guys who wake up at 3 a.m. once waivers processed to go grab those players. We've had tons of testimonials from people who are saying it's pissing off their league mates this year because they're utilizing our tool on fsroundup.com. With a premium subscription as well, you can get access to my top 250 rankings on a weekly basis. You can get a team breakdown from me if you want. There's tons of valuable tools to help you win this year, and you need to utilize them now because you don't want to end the season looking like a guy like this.
This is Ted. Look at him. Ted desperately needs to pick up a new running back, or his fantasy team is toast for the third year in a row. Don't be Ted. Use Fantasy Football Roundup to automate your waiver pickups and rest easy this season. Huh. Look at him.
Now let's look at the wide receivers here. I think Darius Slayton leads the pack at 16.6% rostered. We really haven't seen the guy post Malik Neighbors and with Jackson Dart. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty here within the marketplace on Darius Slayton, and that's causing his roster percentage to be so low at 16.6%. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, though, for Darius Slayton. He is a guy that absolutely could come back and hit major big plays with Jackson Dart at quarterback. And Wan'Dale Robinson, as much as I like him, and as much as he should be on rosters right now for sure, I think Darius Slayton should be a stash guy because he could easily start to provide some massive big play upside in your flex position in the coming weeks. Because again, we haven't seen it yet without Malik Neighbors and with Jackson Dart. Kayshon Boutte also should be stashed right now. 24.4% rostered on ESPN leagues. And Kayshon Boutte, I've been kind of known over here on this channel to really like Kayshon Boutte. There's just something about the LSU wide receiver factory. And Kayshon Boutte comes from that factory. So I like Kayshon Boutte, the talent. And he is definitely showing his talent this year in New England. Now, it's been spot starts, and you don't know when you can play the guy, but if Stephon Diggs gets injured, it opens up a massive opportunity. And maybe he just becomes the wide receiver one, and Stephon Diggs isn't as good as we once thought he could be. I think Kayshon Boutte should be on rosters because the bottom line is this: Drake May is playing well enough right now to host at least 2 wide receivers from the New England Patriots roster on your fantasy roster. Luther Burden actually shot up for me. He's at number 3 at the wide receiver, and these are all ranked in order for me. 9.6% roster right now. That number needs to go up now. Luther Burden could easily find himself in a much better position to play if DJ Moore misses any time. I think Luther Burden is a guy people are overlooking right now. He was a big waiver pickup a couple weeks back when he had one big play. This is the time I actually think Luther Burden should be on rosters. Ahead of week 7, before week 8, I think Luther Burden needs to be on rosters because he could easily find himself in a massive role if DJ Moore misses time. Elick Ayamainer at number 4, 24.4% rostered. And listen, Calvin Ridley might miss time. They just fired their offensive coordinator. Him and Cam Ward have had the most amount of chemistry in that Tennessee Titans offense. I think that lines up where it could be like, hey, this guy with a new offensive coordinator, it could kickstart things. So I think Elick Ayamainer is the wide receiver I would want out of Tennessee right now, and that is the guy I think that should be rostered. Josh Downs, 47.5% rostered. Maybe it's a little bit obvious to people, but he's still under 50% rostered, so I kept him in this range. But the reason he's not towards number 1 is because I still don't know if I trust him full season as far as his workload has been this year. It's been very, very spotty at times, and it's also not tons of downfield valuable targets that he's getting on a weekly basis, so I do still think there's limitations here with Josh Downs' upside, but I do still think that he should be rostered moving forward. And then Jayden Reed. Do not forget about Jayden Reed. He's being dropped every single week, 44.4% roster, but at one time, he was projected to come back into this offense in late October. This guy could make a late season push at your flex position on your roster. I think that he should be rostered if you have an IR spot, and again, if your bench is deep enough to house Jayden Reed, because you're going to miss a couple more games with him. Jaden Higgins in this Houston offense, they're just waiting for someone to break out in Houston, and they don't know who it's going to be yet. 21.5% rostered, though. I do think that he's the guy that you would want over Christian Kirk because I do think that he's obviously got the draft capital and he's a rookie. Torrey Horton, 3.8% rostered. I still view him as a guy who has wide receiver 2 upside in Seattle. I don't trust Cooper Kupp long-term. He's older. He's decrepit. He's not looking as good. I think Torrey Horton has a legitimate chance to do that. And the way Darnold is playing this year, that could open a lot of things up. Now, he's still too inconsistent from a workload perspective. His game log is not consistent enough. He's more of a special teams guy still, but I do still think that Torrey Horton should be rostered in deeper leagues. Christian Kirk, I do also consider a rosterable guy for stash upside in deeper leagues. 23.9% rostered. Again, Houston is waiting for a wide receiver 2 to break out, and it could be Christian Kirk. And realistically, I would want him over a guy like Christian Watson, who I also consider a stash-worthy guy as well. He may return this week, and he's 8.2% rostered. This is a big play threat. He's played a massive role in Green Bay's offense in prior situations. Obviously, with the injury, it does make me want to reconsider picking him up over a guy like Christian Kirk, which is why I would pick up Christian Kirk before him, because Christian Kirk has been more involved, and we could kind of count on him as maybe a slot wide receiver position over Christian Watson, who is returning from injury. We don't know yet, but I do think the upside is there. And then our tight ends right here. I think there's a couple worthwhile plays. A.J. Barnard, to me, it's kind of weird how people are not rostering this guy. I think he should be rostered. 11.9% rostered right now. I think that's a very low number. I think A.J. Barnard is, if all you have to do is look at what he's done on FSRoundup.com, look at what the guy has done. He's been very good from a fantasy perspective. He's getting in the end zone. The way Darnold is playing is very consistent, and he's been mostly the tight end 1 in this offense all year long. Like, he is consistently getting, pretty decent target share outside of a couple stray weeks. I think A.J. Barnard should be on people's rosters and in consideration for being their tight end 1 play. And Mason Taylor at 28.2% rostered, I think that he's definitely a guy that should be rostered as well. He is also in a position to where he's going to find himself getting more targets on a consistent basis without Garrett Wilson. This guy is opening up opportunities because of Garrett Wilson's demise, and that's bad for Garrett Wilson, but good for Mason Taylor. He's already been getting targeted mostly on a weekly basis, around 5 to 6 targets per game. I think Mason Taylor moving forward, though, has a lot more upside. Evan Ingram, I do think should be rostered. 56.2% rostered, only because of the big name, but there's been a lot of people dropping him. But if you look at the workload since he's been back, he's consistently getting 4 to 5 targets a game. I think that he should be on rosters because of Denver's offense, and I think his red zone usage will go up as well. Isaiah Likely, do not forget about him. Isaiah Likely looks bad right now because they haven't had Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, when he returns after the bye week, this offense is about to change, and people will all of a sudden remember that Isaiah Likely is important in this offense. I think that Isaiah Likely is a guy you should jump on now during the Ravens bye week because I think that his upside in fantasy is about to go through the roof, and he'll become a major waiver pickup, and that's the point of this video. You want to jump out ahead of the waiver wire and stash these players early. Darnell Washington, what we call him in Pittsburgh, is Matt. The big Matt Washington is because he's massive, and he's actually secretly the Pittsburgh Steelers tight end 1. Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, they're both solid options for the Steelers as a team, but in fantasy football right now, Darnell Washington is the guy that you want. They're using him more in the passing game. He's on the field constantly. I think that he has major upside in deep leagues. I'm not saying to play him this week. I'm not saying to play him next week. I'm not telling you to take any of these tight ends because I don't like having 2 tight ends on a roster in a shallow league. But if you are in a deeper league, 14-man, 16-man, or have 8+ bench spots, then yes, having a second tight end is good, and I think Darnell Washington is entering that territory. So let me know who you're stashing ahead of Week 7 fantasy football, and if you want to see the top 30 running back rankings for Week 7, click on this video right here.